12 songs on a record, 12 months in a year. Coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Big Month wants you to know that. They just decided that there's 12 months and we're just supposed to deal with it, okay? Everyone knows that the government made there be 12 months so we divide our lives into 12 sections to make us buy more shit. Think about it. You know what you call a conspiracy theory? The truth that just hasn't been outed yet. Everything's a conspiracy theory when you don't know how anything works. Anyway, welcome. It's another episode of How It's Made. But don't sue me. This is not actually what it's called. This isn't the Canadian educational series where you learn how Doritos are made. This is how you learn how I make my little songs. And instead of a factory, it is Studio One and my basement in my brain. This song is the November of the calendar year that is this album. My name is Alex. I make music as Arcade Island. I just put out an album, and by just, I mean like 11 weeks ago. Every week, I've been looking at a song on the album and showing you how it's made. Last week was No One's Coming to Save Us, and today is The Bottom Line. The bottom line is, we're almost done with this shit. This song is the second oldest song on the record. The oldest is Leviathan, as we've already established. This one was like 2016, I want to say. I don't feel like opening up my old MacBook to find out. Let's say 2016. This is 2016. And I have the original demo for it. Be warned, this is a demo, like a lowercase d demo. It is rough, but I'm going to put myself out there in the sake of transparency. So here goes. Every now and then I find a way for him to borrow. Every now and then I can. One more innocent of mine is going to be fine, and you did not believe it. You should feel pretty good about yourself. You should be thinking like, I can't make music, but then you hear that and you're like, oh, well, that dude made that piece of shit sound half decent. I can do anything, and you can do anything. I really liked it at the time, but I think the thing that prevented me from doing anything with it was because I was broke and I couldn't afford to have session musicians perform the strings. And as we all know, I hate MIDI strings. And so I just was like, all right, I'll throw it out. And that was what I thought was unique about it. So I didn't like convert it into anything else. And then now, fast forward to now, 9 years later, I'm not broke anymore. Well, I'm a little broke. I'm like middle class broke. Like I can afford to do all this. But if I broke my legs and was in the hospital for 4 days, just stick a fork in me. When this album was being put together in my brain somewhere, I thought, finally that old chestnut can be dug up and made into something cool. And I think I did it, by George. So let's do it. Let's dive into it. We already discussed the transition into the song from No One's Going to Save Us, so you can go watch that video if you want to learn how that transitional element builds into it. But let's just start with the big boys up top, the strings. Throughout the demoing process, they were just MIDI strings, and they sound like this. They do have a good body to them, but I think the staccato strings sound a little bit better than like the more legato or glissando ones, but they're still a little robotic and lifeless. And so that's when I sent those chords off to Jess and Tom, and they so graciously, expertly broke them down into their individual notes and then performed them multiple times, sent them my way so I could mix them to my leisure, and they sound like this. As you might have guessed, I kept the original strings in there, but just mixed a little bit lower. Again, helps to add a little bit more body to it. And all of those strings are going to a bus called Strings Out, which you could have guessed, where I just added some saturation distortion to give it a little bit more spark and cut out the low end, because a lot of those instruments together had a lot of like sub frequencies that were building up that you couldn't really hear, but the computer hears it, and sub frequencies take up a lot more energy than higher frequencies do. So you always got to keep track. It's like the first thing that you need to look at in your mix to make sure that you're not like losing all your headroom or you have too hot of a signal. And generally a lot of like microphone recordings are always going to have room noise and stuff that are just at a sub frequency. And then I did some bus compression to keep it all together. And then I have reverb that I place on all of that. And that helps make it all sound like it was recorded in like one room. And then we have drums here that kick off pretty strong. That's a pretty standard like rock beat. Like if you went to like a Yamaha keyboard from the 2000s and went to like the drum presets and they found rock beat 1, it probably would sound like that. But I hyper compressed it. It kind of sounds like that in the demo, if you can remember that nonsense. But I'm going to skip ahead here because you may notice, or maybe not, but in the context of the song, in the choruses and the rest of the song, outside of the verses, the drums are a lot more natural. They sound like this. So I have like the same drum performances being recorded the same way, but having different effects applied to them. And so there's really 2 ways I could go about that, right? I could leave my setup this way, but then just copy and paste everything down to create 10 new tracks. And then I could apply different effects to a different bus, blah, 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 blah. Or I can get everything sounding the way I want it and then just bounce it all out to a single track and then bring it in. And then I could just have it on 2 tracks and one has a certain effects rack on it and the other one doesn't. I don't really like either of those options because the first one requires me adding 10 more tracks. And as I've mentioned in other songs, these drum tracks have a decent amount of plugins in them. And that can get confusing. And also it just makes the computer work harder. Even if you're not using those tracks at a certain point in the song, the computer still has to like do a draw call and like reference where that effect is. And that just takes up processing power that you don't need to do. The second way just leaves me a lot less wiggle room if I want to change something later on. Like I would need to still preserve this drum mix. And then if I wanted to go back and adjust a snare or something like that, then I need to go re-export it out to a track. And it sounds like a lot. So I thought to myself, there's a decent amount of separation, right? There's silence in between all these drum portions. So why don't I just use automation? And that's what I did. So all of these drum tracks come out to my standard like 2 buses, right? The signal goes directly to this drums out where I'm just adding a little bit of compression to keep it all together. And then some room reverb to just give it a little bit more room noise. And then I have them all being sent to this one where it's being super compressed, almost unlistenably compressed to just bring out those transients. And then I blend them together. So I had both these signals, but you'll notice here, these are sends and this is where like a signal out. These signal outs are going to drums together. And it's here where I added a ton of compression. So I use this thing called Comprexor from T-Rax, which allows me to really crush it. And then I have Decapitation's Distortion. And I have the punish button pushed because it's a bad boy. And then what I did was I just have an automation channel down here. And I just automated the bypass. And basically a bypass as to whether or not that signal is being sent to that secondary bus. And that's all I did. You can see here in the verses, I have the bypass off. And then in the choruses and in the rest of the song, I just have the bypass set to on. So that means that it's bypassing that bus and you're just hearing the more organic, natural sounding drums. My verses are really simple. They're just a single vocal. Every memory I make inside a cemetery always ends for me the same. My standard stack, and then I just have it going to this effects one, which is 2 delays, which is like a tape echo, and then an analog delay, which is like a dotted delay, and a dotted delay or a dotted rhythm basically creates like polyrhythms. Then in the second half of the verse, I bring in the bass. I think I mentioned this before, but this is my last chance because there's no bass in the next song. But yeah, I did everything DI, but then to give the bass a little bit more definition, I also sent all my bass signals to a bus here called bass expand or something to that effect on each track. And all I did was, well, first of all, took out all the low end because I don't need that information twice. Then added some distortion to the upper frequencies and then added chorus, both for effect, but also because that helps add some stereo image to it as opposed to just being in mono. So if you want to hear what that sounds like without, it sounds like this. And then with, And if you're listening to this on an iPhone, you probably won't hear shit, but I don't know. That's on you, man. Then as we get into the pre-chorus, we have this synth melody here, which is two components, a MIDI synth. And then I have the same melody, but just off of my Korg mini log. Oh, and I forgot about this. I just moved this up here. There's also this very faint, more percussive synthesizer sound that I did on my Sub 25. And all together, it sounds like this. And then I have some vocals in the pre-chorus that are pretty simple. Just one primary lead.
Knife in the gut, with no answers, but what's fair?
With a single harmony underneath it.
Knife in the gut, with no answers, but what's fair?
And together, it sounds like this.
Knife in the gut, with no answers, but what's fair?
And those are going to a bus called pre-chorus, and that's where I'm applying all of the fuzz that you're hearing, which is actually a digital pedal. It's called Fat. And then we get into the chorus.
Tell me everything is fine, but
Our trusty rhythm section is doing this. And you can see there's a little bit of space there for the snare. Pretty locked into each other. We bring in some heavier guitars. And then we have some space guitars here that are coming to a bus called Space Guitar, where I'm just adding a lot of delay. And this is a similar technique to what I did on Good Deeds and I think one or two other songs. It's a very atmospheric thing and just playing simple eighth notes. And then in my vocals, we have a primary melody that is doubled.
tell me everything is fine, but nothing is. All around me are goodbyes and condolences. Are we?
And some left and right harmonies.
Tell me everything is fine, but nothing is. All around me are goodbyes
And those are all going out to a bus called Vox Vocal Out. And there's a delay on it that I sent to like an automation channel, and I kind of bring it in and out. I almost wanted it to sound a little unstable. There's really not a rhyme or reason to it. I kind of wanted it to sound like they were sort of rotating in a way.
Tell me everything is fine, but nothing is. All around me are goodbyes and condolences. Are we only?
That's it for the choruses. That last note rings out. And as we get into the second verse, our rhythm section is pretty much the same. But I drop the strings and we move to this guitar lead, which sounds like this. It's the same recording, so there's one that's pretty clean with just some delay on it. I don't know, as I was listening to it, it didn't have enough left-right characteristic to me. So I just copied and pasted the performance, which you can see this is not recorded twice, it is just the same identical performance, which when you first start recording music, you might make the mistake that I did, which is thinking that if I just copy and paste the same performance and then put it left and right, you'll get like a stereo image. But all that really does is take a mono signal and make it louder. You can add different effects to one channel than the other, and it'll get a little bit of a stereo image, but it's not quite the same. But I did that here, so don't listen to me. And that's just hard left, and I took a lot of the lower end out of it and then added this ring modulator to make it a little bit more unnatural. And then my vocals, again, still just singles.
We lie in bed and talk of all the dreams we'll build together. It's such a gift to say I love you.
And then when love comes in, and doesn't it always, I have these building harmonies. I don't know what you would call them, but you don't hear the building aspect in the song so well. Which I love.
Say I love you. To hold you now when we both.
It's very nice and very pretty. And those are all just going to a harmonies bus where I'm adding some chorus, some saturation, and some delay. And then we get into the second pre-chorus and we bring the strings back. And then the second chorus is the same as the first. And then we end on this note. The strings, these are some of my favorite strings on the record. Thank you, Jess and Tom. I just think they sound so urgent, and they're just kind of constantly ascending. And so, yeah, you got to hear all of that. And then I bring my vocals in a little bit softer. And honestly, from a mixing perspective, I think I should have bumped these up a little bit. When I listen to this song, I think they sound a little bit low, but there's no real wrong way to mix music, I guess. It just has to go with what sounds good. And you might listen to it and think that sounds fine.
Last year's trauma, this year's loss. Through my window, life goes on. There's no fighting the bottom line. Guess I'll learn to cope.
I just put a little slap delay on that. And then in the harmonies channel, which again, I just reused, but it worked. If it didn't work, I would have made new tracks. But I'm not that lazy.
Time may give it meaning, but I've lost resolve. I don't care anymore.
And then I have just some guitar, not feedback, but more just sort of white noise, if you will. Like I just kind of shook the guitar a little bit. And that's timed to stop right as the snare hits in this drum fill. And then it all just kind of takes off. And the strings are just playing a drone. Not super exciting, but it just adds tension and fills up some of those higher frequencies. And then I'm screaming here. And I went back and forth a few times as to whether or not that was going to be like a long extended scream similar to this one, which I just kind of threw in there because it was cool. And versus this one, which is shorter, but has like this long delay. And I went with that one because it sounded more like screaming into a canyon or screaming into the void. Like it was supposed to be like a catharsis, a release of like desperation. Basically, the guitars are doing this. The bass is just playing the root notes. That was something very deliberate there, where I wanted the chugs to kind of be synced up to those snares, or vice versa, or however you want to think about it. And I have these guitar leads here that are just reusing this bass guitar from the chorus, but they're just playing octaves. Kind of like a MCR thing, I guess, is what I was probably listening to. And then I do this triplet fill into like some pinch harmonics. Which I think rules. And then we go into some more like a more driving 4 on the floor type of rhythm. And the guitar lead is doing this. And my vocals are pretty stacked here, just to fight through all that noise.
This is something I'll have to fake. Maybe I could.
With some harmonies.
This is something I'll have to fake. Maybe I could find some faith.
Then we pound on it till the end. And those guitar leads are doing this dissonant thing. And then it all drops out and we go to like a softer version of the chorus, which is mostly driven by this string section. And then I'm just singing the main chorus lyric, but in a more restrained style.
Tell me everything is fine, but nothing is. All around me are goodbyes and condolences.
And then it's time for a fucking key change. And so I just bring everything up by a fifth. So, I mean, the song is the same, all the arrangements and the notes are all in the same relationship to each other. I don't really modulate anything else, except everything just gets raised by a fifth. Which thankfully my vocals in the earlier choruses was a slightly lower register, so I could bump up to this new one and not be pushing my voice too much.
Tell me everything is fine, but nothing is. All around me are goodbyes and condolences.
And then there's just this part here that kind of bridges that last chorus with this outro. It's a little hard to hear what's going on, so I'll get rid of the guitars. And the tempo changes here. You could say you go from 193 to 129, and it goes from common time to 3/4 time. That's why you can hear the delays change a little bit there. And then that's pretty much it. Those ring out, and then the string section comes back, which, you know, if you've listened to the whole record, should sound pretty familiar. And that's, of course, live strings. And then I have my MIDI strings in there. And then all the way from Savannah Moon, we have Keith's strings again. I'm far from the first person to do this kind of thing. It's fun to help make an album more than just a collection of songs by making it something that rises and falls and tells a story on and all of its own. The reason those strings are there is that's really the end of the narrative of the album, if you ask me, from a personal perspective. Like, this is the most personal song on the record. It's really a song about desperation. I think if you live life long enough, it starts to just feel sometimes like you're just getting hit from every angle. And it sometimes feels like suffering is just part of the deal. You're very lucky to go long periods of time in life without someone dying or someone getting hurt or someone getting sick or losing a job or whatever it might be. Or it's the lyric in the album that I think, I don't know if I'm most proud of, but the one that I think represents my mental state at the time of writing this the most, which is, are we in this life to just be defeated? Like, I'm here to enjoy all this, but it kind of just feels like I'm getting kicked in the ass all the time. And hopefully somebody else can relate to that. But that's that. That is the end. That is the end of the bottom line. We are in the home stretch. We only got one more left after this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I learn something new about myself every time. Like, I can't label for shit. Go listen to my album, please. Tell everyone about it. Tell your boss. Tell your local librarian. Write your politicians. I hire one of those guys at Ocean City that flies the planes that have like, Mike's Crab Shack, 50% off, or like case of Coors for like 10% off or whatever. That probably doesn't cost much. I'm not going to do it, but you could do it. It's a family friendly record, I think, besides the fucks and the existential despair. Kids love that stuff. So yeah, another one of these. I'm just going to end with me rambling into the abyss.